Hello and welcome back to Peculiar English, and this is where we help you with some tricky areas of English language. Today we're going to look at a few irregular verbs which maybe you're not so familiar with. So let's start with bid. Bid can mean offer to buy. So that picture represents an auction. And at an auction, different people bid for something, and the one who bids the most is successful. That person is called the highest bidder. And bid can also mean to attempt something. So it's an irregular verb. It's in the same group as put or set. So it just doesn't change. Bid, bid, bid. So please bid by raising your hands. That could be in an auction. And so that's the present form. They bid to become the top ranked IT provider. So that's the past tense. And that's the meaning of attempted. No one has bid for the contract, but it remains open to offers. So that's the past participle, and you can see that's the meaning of offer a certain amount of money. And our second verb today in this episode is bind. Bind has an original meaning of tying things closely together. Okay? But it can also mean to be obliged, to have an obligation, with the idea that you are bound. In other words, you are tightly connected to that promise or obligation. It's an irregular verb in the same group as find. So bind, bound, bound. Their ties of culture and faith bind them together. Present tense, you can see they connect them closely together. They bound the Bibles in the finest leather. So that's the past form. And when you take all of the pages and you attach them together in a book, that process is called binding, book binding in this case. She was bound by her code of ethics to report it. So that's the past participle, and this meaning is that she was obliged. Okay, two more. Cast. So the basic original meaning of cast is to throw. And here in the picture, somebody is casting a net to catch fish. But cast is often used in expressions with a metaphorical sense of throwing or putting or spreading. We'll see one or two examples of that. And it's also used in some compound verbs, such as broadcast, which means to spread or transmit, and forecast, which means to predict. So they are also in that set of irregular verbs that doesn't change, like put, put, put. So here we have cast, cast, cast. And that's the same with the other verbs, broadcast, 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 for example. So, can you cast an eye over this document? It means look at, that's the present tense. And cast an eye, I suppose, means move or spread your view across the document quickly. They forecast rain, but it turned out dry and sunny. So that's the past tense. And we talk about a weather forecast. It's one of the more common uses. But, for example, also economic forecasts. The concert was broadcast on live television. So, in this case, it was transmitted. And that's the past participle. And the last irregular verb today, dig. Well, that's the basic meaning of dig there in the picture. Using a tool, for example, a shovel, to dig a hole. But it is also used metaphorically, especially in the sense of digging for information or facts. And here it's dig, dug, dug. You'll need to dig a bit deeper to find the truth. That's the present tense, and you can see that's in the metaphorical sense of researching, finding information. The volunteers dug wells for local villages. That's the past tense and the basic meaning of making a hole. So a well is a deep hole for collecting water. These artifacts were dug up in a nearby field. So again, that means they were taken from under the ground. Artifacts are interesting objects, and so archaeology is the science where people dig to look for artifacts. So, some practice for you. Here are some sentences with gaps. All of the words are at the bottom, and you need to decide which gap to put each of the verbs in. And you will be able to see a link to an online version of this if you want to do it yourself on the web. Or you can just look at this video and think for yourself. And in a moment, I'm going to go to the next part, the answers. So you can pause this recording to do it yourself. Okay, so I hope you had enough time to check what you thought the answers were, and we'll go through them quickly. As you can see, the first one is to cast a wide net. And of course, fisher people will cast a net to catch fish, but we use this expression in recruitment, in human resources. To cast a wide net means to advertise and make the position known to as many people as possible. The second one, we must have dug up potatoes. Of course, in the garden, if you plant potatoes, you need to dig them up afterwards. Economists have forecast a sharp downturn, and that's what they think will happen in the future. What am I bid? So this is an auction. Remember that people have to offer different sums of money that they are willing to spend in order to buy something. And this is the passive form. the auctioneer is asking people to bid. So what am I bid is passive. But the verb bid doesn't change anyway. It's bid, bid, bid. The next one is from biology or biochemistry. Cells have receptors, proteins which bind to other molecules. So they connect or attach very tightly. The same verb, but this time it's in the past participle. Australia and New Zealand are tightly bound. So they're closely connected. The next one, she bid to become the first. So in this case, this is the past tense and it's the sense of attempted. Next, he cast his eyes downwards. In other words, he looked down. And in this case, maybe he wanted to avoid someone looking at him and asking questions or something like that. The next one, they are doing their best to dig up some dirt. So again, this is the metaphorical meaning of researching and finding some information. And in this case, it means negative information about someone. And finally, TV programs broadcast before 7:30 are expected to be family friendly because the whole family, including the children, might be watching at that time. So anyway, I hope that helped you with some maybe peculiar or unfamiliar verbs, but I hope you see different ways you could use them. And we'll continue with some other irregular verbs in a future episode of Peculiar English from the University of Notre Dame, Australia.